the invisible code that saves the digital world. How Reed-Solomon math powers CDs, QR codes, space missions, and your everyday life. Civilization does not survive because everything works perfectly. It survives because we learn how to recover when things go wrong. That may sound like a lesson from philosophy, or business, or even life itself. But hidden deep inside your phone, your Wi-Fi, your QR code payments, your old DVDs, your cloud storage, and the messages humanity sends across the black ocean of space, there is a piece of mathematics built around that exact idea. Not perfection, recovery. Because the modern world is not clean. It is noisy, it is scratched, it is interrupted, it is filled with weak signals, damaged files, dust, heat, cosmic radiation, cheap cables, imperfect lenses, shaking hands, and machines that are always one tiny mistake away from misunderstanding everything. And yet, somehow, your music still plays, your photo still opens, your payment still goes through, a QR code with a smudge on it still works. A spacecraft billions of miles away can whisper across the solar system, and we can still understand what it is saying. The reason is not magic, it is not luck, it is not because our technology is flawless. It is because, decades ago, two mathematicians found a way to teach information how to survive injury. Their names were Irving Reed and Gustave Solomon, and the idea they created, Reed-Solomon error correction, became one of the most invisible foundations of the digital age. This is the story of a tiny 5 pages paper that helped build the modern world. To understand why this mattered, imagine trying to send a perfect message through a storm. You speak one sentence into a radio. The other person hears only pieces. A crackle here, a missing word there. Static washes over the middle. In the old world, you had two basic options. You could repeat yourself over and over, wasting time and bandwidth. Or you could accept that the message might be broken. That was annoying when the message was ordinary. It became terrifying when the message was data. Because computers do not forgive the way humans do. If a friend says, "Meet me at the restaurant at Sev," you can probably guess the missing part. But if a computer loses one bit in the wrong place, a photo can corrupt, a song can skip, a file can fail, and a spacecraft image can become digital confetti. The deeper humanity moved into the electronic age, the more obvious the impossible problem became. How do you make machines communicate reliably when the universe itself keeps damaging the message? This was not a small inconvenience. It was one of the central barriers standing between the analog past and the digital future. In the middle of the 20th century, electronics were becoming faster, but also more demanding. Radar systems needed to send binary information. Early computers needed reliable memory. Communication lines needed to carry digital words without turning them into nonsense. And all of it had to happen in a world where every physical channel was imperfect. A wire is not just a wire. It is a battlefield of interference. A disk is not just a disk. It is a surface waiting to be scratched. A beam of light is not just a beam. It is a fragile messenger traveling through dust, distance, vibration, and decay. The dream was simple. Send information from one place to another and have it arrive intact. The reality was brutal. Information gets hurt. Before Reed and Solomon, there had already been brilliant work in error correction. Richard Hamming had shown that you could add extra bits to a message in a clever way, allowing a machine to detect and correct certain mistakes. Claude Shannon had revealed something even deeper. Reliable communication was theoretically possible over noisy channels, as long as you designed your codes well enough and stayed within certain limits. But there is a huge difference between knowing that a mountain can be climbed and knowing where to put your hands. Engineers needed practical codes. Codes that could handle not just one little mistake here or there, but whole bursts of damage. Codes that could survive the kind of errors real machines produced. Because real errors rarely arrive politely. They do not come one at a time, neatly spaced apart, waiting to be corrected. They arrive like rain on paper. They arrive as scratches across a disk, as static across a signal, as a patch of damaged symbols in a stream of data. And that is where the story moves to Mitt Lincoln Laboratory, a place built for hard problems. In the late 1950s, Irving Reed was already the kind of thinker who lived comfortably at the border between mathematics and machines. He was not just playing with abstractions, he understood hardware, he understood computation, he understood the practical pain of trying to make information behave in the real world. Gustave Solomon was different in temperament, but equally brilliant. Where Reed was quiet, steady, and deeply technical, Solomon had a more social, eclectic energy. He loved music. He had the soul of a performer as well as a mathematician. The two men were not obvious twins of personality, but they shared something more important. They could see structure where others saw noise. They were working in an era when digital communication was still young enough that the language around it was being invented in real time. The word byte had not even settled into its familiar place yet. Computers were not personal objects, they were rooms, projects, national investments, mysterious machines maintained by specialists. And in that world, Reed and Solomon started thinking about a strange question. What if you could protect not just individual bits, but entire symbols? What if you could take a block of information, treat it as points on a mathematical curve, and then use the curve itself to reconstruct what had been damaged? That is the heart of Reed-Solomon codes. The best analogy is almost childlike. Imagine you draw a smooth curve through a series of points. Now imagine someone erases a few of those points. If enough points remain, you can still figure out what the curve must have been. The missing points are not truly lost, because the surviving points contain a hidden pattern. Reed and Solomon took that intuition and made it rigorous using finite fields, a kind of mathematical universe where numbers behave in unusual but perfectly consistent ways. In normal arithmetic, numbers go on forever. In a finite field, you work inside a closed world like a clock face, except far more powerful. Inside that world, they could turn messages into polynomials. Then they could add carefully chosen extra information, not random repetition, but elegant redundancy. That extra information acted like a built-in repair kit. The message carried its own rescue team. This was the genius. Reed-Solomon codes did not try to prevent errors from happening. That would be impossible. Instead, they assumed errors would happen and designed the message so it could be healed afterward. In 1960, Reed and Solomon published polynomial codes over certain finite fields. It was not a thick book. It was not a dramatic public launch. It was a short mathematical paper, only a few pages, the kind of thing most people would never notice. But some ideas do not arrive with thunder. They arrive quietly, like seeds. And for a while, that is all Reed-Solomon codes seemed to be, a beautiful seed without soil. The mathematics was strong. The theory was dazzling. But the machines of the time were not ready. This is one of the most human parts of the story. We love to imagine breakthroughs as instant revolutions. Someone has the idea, the world sees it, everyone cheers, and the future changes by morning. That is almost never how technology works. Often, the idea before the world has the ability to use it. Reed and Solomon had created a code that could protect digital information with extraordinary efficiency, but decoding it was hard. The math required serious computation. The hardware was expensive, limited, and slow by modern standards. What looked elegant on paper could look painful in circuitry. So the idea waited, not because it was weak, but because it was early. This happens again and again in technological history. A breakthrough can be born in one decade and only become powerful in another. Timing is not just a detail. Timing is the oxygen of invention. For Reed and Solomon, the delay must have been bittersweet. They had glimpsed something enormous, but the world could not yet fully reward it. Their codes were known in specialist circles, but they were not famous. They were not household names. They did not become cultural icons, and yet, slowly, the machinery of the future began to catch up. One of the crucial next steps came from people who figured out how to decode these ideas more efficiently. Elwin Berlekamp, and later, work connected with James Massey, helped turn abstract algebraic coding into something far more practical. These decoding breakthroughs mattered because a code is only as useful as your ability to decode it in time. A locked vault is impressive. A locked vault you can actually open is valuable. As computers became faster, as integrated circuits improved, as digital systems spread, Reed-Solomon codes started moving from theory into infrastructure. Then came one of their greatest stages: space. Deep space communication is one of the most unforgiving communication problems humans have ever attempted. A spacecraft does not send messages across a room. It sends faint signals across millions or billions of miles. By the time those signals reach Earth, they are unbelievably weak. They have traveled through radiation, distance, and time. They arrive like whispers from another age. When a spacecraft sends back an image, it is not really sending an image in the way our brains imagine one. It is sending data, tiny pieces, symbols, measurements, numbers, and any part of that stream can be wounded along the way. For missions like Voyager, error correction was not a luxury. It was survival. The Voyager spacecraft launched in 1977, built to visit the outer planets and then continue outward into the unknown. They became among the greatest explorers humanity has ever made, not because they had eyes, but because they could send back data that we could understand. And Reed-Solomon coding became part of the larger family of techniques that helped deep space communication become more reliable. It worked especially well alongside other coding methods, creating layered protection for fragile signals. One code could handle one kind of problem, another could handle another, like a relay team carrying meaning across the void. This is where the poetry of the technology becomes almost overwhelming. A mathematical paper written in the early 1960s helped humanity listen to machines traveling beyond the planets. Think about that. A scratch on a CD is annoying. A corrupted television signal is frustrating, but a damaged space transmission could mean losing a piece of history. A moon, a ring, a storm on Jupiter, a pale dot suspended in darkness. Error correction turned noise into knowledge. It did not make space less vast. It made our whispers more durable. But Reed-Solomon codes were not destined to remain in laboratories and space agencies. Their next transformation would happen in living rooms, music stores, and teenagers' bedrooms. The compact disc looks simple now, a shiny circle, a piece of plastic, almost nostalgic, but when it arrived, it was a miracle of consumer engineering. For decades, recorded music had been tied to physical contact. Needles touched grooves. Tape heads touched magnetic tape. Sound was carried by surfaces that wore down. Dust mattered. Scratches mattered. Time mattered. The compact disc promised something almost magical. Digital sound read by light, but there was a problem. People are not gentle with objects. A perfect CD in a perfect laboratory is one thing. A CD in the real world is another. It gets fingerprints, it gets dust, it slides across a table, it falls behind a car seat, it picks up scratches, sometimes long enough to destroy thousands of tiny bits in a row. A normal error correction method might handle a few random mistakes. But a scratch is not random. A scratch is a burst. It is a little canyon carved across the data. For CDs to work as a mass-market product, they needed to survive ordinary human carelessness. And there, once again, Reed-Solomon codes became essential. The compact disc used a system known as cross-interleaved Reed-Solomon coding. The phrase sounds technical, but the idea is beautiful. Instead of storing nearby pieces of music, only next to each other, the system spreads and interweaves the data. So, if a scratch damages one physical region of the disk, the damage gets scattered logically across the recovered stream, making it easier to correct. It is like taking a fragile sentence, mixing its words carefully across many envelopes, and adding clues so that even if one envelope is damaged, the whole message can be reconstructed. That is why a scratched CD could often keep playing. Not because the scratch was harmless, because the system was prepared for harm. This changed the emotional relationship people had with technology. Digital media began to feel sturdy, clean, and almost immortal. The music did not hiss in the same way. It did not crackle like vinyl. It did not stretch like tape. A laser read the disc, and hidden mathematics quietly repaired the injuries. Most people never knew the code was there. They heard a song. Behind the song, algebra was fighting for continuity. Then the same invisible idea spread outward. DVDs, Blu-ray discs, digital television, satellite communications, data storage, RAID systems, DSL, cable modems, two-dimensional barcodes, and eventually QR codes. The QR code may be the most everyday example of Reed-Solomon's strange power. A QR code is visually ugly in a useful way. It is a little city of black and white blocks. But what makes it powerful is not just how much information it can store. It is how much damage it can tolerate. A QR code can be partially covered, printed poorly, wrinkled, faded, or interrupted by a logo in the middle, and still work. That resilience is not an accident. QR codes use Reed-Solomon error correction, allowing the scanner to reconstruct missing or damaged parts of the encoded data. This is why modern life can casually depend on them. Menus, train tickets, boarding passes, warehouse labels, payment systems, medical forms, museum guides, event check-ins, product tracking. A tiny square on a poster can survive the messy world because Reed and Solomon taught symbols how to cooperate. And now we arrive at the climax of the story. The modern world is not merely using Reed-Solomon codes as an old trick. It is built on the larger philosophy they helped make practical. Today, everything is communication. Your phone talks to towers. Data centers talk to other data centers. Streaming services talk to televisions. Satellites talk to ground stations. Cars talk to sensors. Hospitals talk to databases. Factories talk to robots. Banks talk to networks. Cameras talk to storage chips. Even your smartwatch is part of a constant invisible conversation. And every conversation is vulnerable. The silent race behind modern technology is the race to make information more reliable, while moving it faster, cheaper, and farther. Every company wants more bandwidth. Every device wants lower power. Every network wants less delay. Every storage system wants higher density. But the physical world keeps pushing back. Signals weaken. Chips heat up. Memory cells shrink. Wireless channels collide. Optical fibers face distortion. Storage drives age. Cosmic rays can flip bits in memory. At massive scale, even rare errors become normal. When you operate billions of devices, almost never happens every day. That is why error correction has become a hidden empire. Not always Reed-Solomon alone. Today, there are many powerful descendants and neighbors. Turbo codes, LDPC codes, polar codes, and other sophisticated systems. Modern communication is a cathedral of error correction techniques. But C-Solomon remains one of the great pillars, especially where burst errors, symbols, storage, and legacy systems matter. Its deeper legacy is the mindset. Do not trust the channel. Do not assume the message arrives safely. Build recovery into the design. This mindset quietly shapes the modern internet and the global digital economy. When you upload a photo to the cloud, you expect it to be there tomorrow. When you scan a code to pay for lunch, you expect the right account to open. When a satellite beams back weather data, you expect the forecast to be based on reality, not corrupted noise. When a movie streams across continents, you expect the story to continue. The miracle is not that errors disappeared. The miracle is that we stopped noticing them. That is the strange fate of infrastructure. When it succeeds, it becomes invisible. Nobody applauds the bridge every morning. Nobody thanks the power grid when the light turns on. Nobody thinks about error correction when the QR code scans on the first try. But beneath that tiny moment of convenience is one of the most profound ideas in engineering history. A system can be designed not to avoid every failure, but to absorb failure and still deliver meaning. There is a deep human lesson in that. Reed and Solomon did not build a world where information never breaks. They built a world where broken information could be made whole again. And maybe that is why this story feels bigger than mathematics. Because every durable business, every resilient technology, and every meaningful life has to face the same truth. Noise is guaranteed. Damage is guaranteed. Miscommunication is guaranteed. The question is whether you have built enough intelligence, redundancy, patience, and structure to recover. So what can we learn from this hidden code that quietly runs our world? The first lesson is that the most valuable innovations often begin as tools for resilience, not speed. In technology, speed gets attention, faster chips, faster downloads, faster deliveries, faster growth. Speed is easy to market because everyone will feel it immediately. But resilience is different. Resilience is quiet. You only notice it when it is absent. A CD that skips feels broken. QR code that fails feels annoying. A file that corrupts feels catastrophic. But when everything works, the protection disappears into the background. That makes resilience one of the hardest things to sell and one of the most important things to build. Great systems are not just optimized for best-case scenarios. They are designed for dust, scratches, weak signals, tired users, aging hardware, and imperfect conditions. The second lesson is that being early can feel exactly like being wrong. Reed and Solomon created something extraordinary before the world could fully use it. For years, their code was more promise than product. That delay could have made the idea look impractical. But the idea was not impractical. It was waiting for the rest of the ecosystem to mature. This is a pattern founders, researchers, and creators should never forget. Some ideas fail because they are bad, others fail because the tools, costs, culture, or timing are not ready yet. The painful part is that, from the inside, those two situations can look almost identical. The world is full of seeds that were planted in the wrong season. The third lesson is that invisibility is not the same as insignificance. Reed Solomon codes do not have a famous logo. They do not sit on a store shelf. They do not have fans waiting in line for a launch event. Most people using them have never heard their name, and yet they have touched billions of lives. That should change how we think about impact. The modern world is not only shaped by celebrity inventors and dramatic product reveals. It is also shaped by quiet mathematicians, careful engineers, standards committees, decoding algorithms, and tiny decisions buried deep inside systems people never see. Some of the most powerful work in history is not the work that gets the loudest applause. It is the work that makes everything else possible. And that brings us back to the beginning. Civilization does not survive because everything works perfectly. It survives because we learn how to recover when things go wrong. Every time a scratched disc plays one more song, every time a QR code scans despite a smudge, every time a spacecraft sends home a message from the edge of darkness, there is a hidden act of repair taking place. Not dramatic, not visible, not celebrated, but essential. The digital world is not a glass palace where nothing breaks. It is a living system full of cracks, noise, and constant correction. And somewhere inside it, the legacy of Irving Reed and Gustave Solomon is still doing what all great technology does at its best. It takes a fragile human hope, the hope that meaning can survive the journey and gives it a fighting chance. If this story changed the way you see the invisible systems around you, like the video, subscribe for more hidden histories of technology, and watch another story about the quiet breakthroughs that secretly built the modern world. Sources used for factual accuracy. Hidmet Lincoln Laboratory describes Reed and Solomon's 1960 paper and its lasting uses in deep space communication, CDs, DVDs, QR codes, and HDTV. The original paper, Polynomial Codes Over Certain Finite Fields, was published in 1960 in the Journal of the Society for Industrial and Applied Mathematics. Denso Wave states that QR code error correction is implemented by adding Reed-Solomon code to the original data. The Audio Engineering Society summary notes that the compact disk system used cross-interleaved Reed-Solomon coding for burst and random error correction. A historical Wired profile discusses Reed, Solomon, Lincoln Laboratory, the delayed commercial usefulness of their codes, and Berlecamp's role in decoding work.